Okay, hi everyone. I'm Ema Demšar. As you just heard, I was speaking Slovenian with Aleš, so I'm from the same country as he is. I'm doing my PhD at Monash University in Australia, and today I'm going to be talking about lucid dreaming, focusing specifically on a recent neurophysiological study that we just wrapped up, in which we used micro-phenomenology to investigate signal-verified lucid dream experiences. So, yeah, starting at the basics. Lucid dreaming, as I'm sure most of you know, can be defined as dreaming during which the dreamer is aware that they're currently dreaming, often while staying immersed in their dream experience or even acquiring a degree of control over their dream experience and their dream world. Spontaneously occurring lucid dreams are quite a rare phenomenon, but lucid dreaming can be trained as a learnable skill. And indeed, there are contemplative traditions like dream yoga out there, a bunch of online communities, and various induction methods that can help people increase the frequency of lucid dreaming and sort of cultivate it for doing different kinds of stuff in their dreams. So for consciousness researchers, lucid dreaming is of particular interest because it can be regarded as a model for the study of meta-awareness, self-awareness, and insight, not only in dreaming, but in consciousness more broadly. And that relies on roughly two things that lucid dreaming allows us to do. So first of all, REM sleep dreaming, generally speaking, is a form of consciousness or provides us with a form of consciousness that is minimally spoiled, largely independent of sensory input and motor output, which is in itself a pretty cool experimental situation. And then within that experimental situation, lucid dreaming, first of all, introduces a degree of control that our participants have over their experience and mental state. But then it can also be externally verified and temporally marked by using pre-agreed eye movement signals. And I was very amazed when I learned about that, and still am. So the way that this works, even though it's a very standard method that's nowadays used in lucid dreaming, the way that this works is still quite super fascinating for me. So the dreamer, upon becoming aware that they're dreaming, can move their eyes within their dream experience, dream world, and that will correspond to the physical movement of their sleeping eyes. For instance, when they do a predetermined sequence, like left, right eye sequence, we can measure that with an EOG, or it's also visible on the EEG, even if we use EEG sleep wearables, for instance. And that's a pretty cool paradigm, I think, for studying neurophenomenology, not only of lucid dreaming, but of dreaming perhaps more generally. However, the current state of our understanding, both physiological and phenomenological, of lucid dreaming is far from what one might hope for. So in terms of neuroscience of lucid dreaming, the only fMRI study of signal-verified lucid dreams published so far is a case study with 2 episodes and 1 participant. And that has to do with a bunch of technical problems, but also with the fact that it is notoriously difficult to achieve and successfully signal lucid dreams in the scanner environment. And then in terms of EEG studies, there are many of them out there starting in the late 70s, 80s. But so far they have offered mixed and conflicting findings. Again, there's a bunch of more neuroscience reasons for why that might be the case. But in terms of bringing all of this towards phenomenology, which is what we're interested in here, one of the main reasons also has to do with the fact that lucid dreaming as a phenomenon is quite conceptually confused or not really worked out, as well as phenomenologically underexplored. So there's a bunch of problems here, or a bunch of open questions that we still have. The very basic one is, are we, in fact, when we study lucid dreaming, dealing with a bunch of different target phenomena? Related to that, lucid dreaming seems to come in different types and different degrees. However, there has so far been no systematic phenomenological exploration of that. And finally, lucid dreaming mostly, if you've ever had a lucid dream yourself, seems to be characterized by quite complex temporal dynamics. Again, I think that deserves and calls for a phenomenological exploration. So in what follows, I'm going to present to you one recent specific study in which I collaborated with the Donders Institute, the Donders Sleep and Memory Lab. And I'm just going to run very quickly through the lab part of the study, but you can read all about it in this preprint that just came out a week or so ago. So in the lab, we were looking at how successful a certain lucid dream induction protocol was for inducing lucid dreams in participants with no specific prior expertise in lucid dreaming. So the participants took part in a pre-sleep cognitive training and then were administered sensory cues when they were in the REM stage of their sleep. And we had 20 participants in total coming into the lab for 2 nap sessions, and they were measured with an EEG headband while they were sleeping in the lab. We had a very high success of inducing lucid dreaming in this study. So 13 out of 20 participants not only achieved, but also successfully signaled dream lucidity in at least one of the 2 nap sessions. And those who managed to do that were then invited for subsequent micro-phenomenological interviews. So you've heard about micro-phenomenology yesterday, and I'm just going to run through what it consists of very quickly. In general, we can say that micro-phenomenological interviews help participants sort of cultivate their memory and precisely recall a past episode of their experience, and then describe that experience with phenomenological attitude, which we were just hearing about a bit earlier, and in a very precise way. And we try to do that as interviewers by using open-ended and non-leading questions that help engender that phenomenological attitude. So here is just one example of a number of different questions that you might ask. If a participant says, "I feel anxious," that's a description of experience, but still a very abstract one. So the interviews try to break down the abstractions and come to the concrete phenomenological data about what it was like for the participants to be anxious in that moment. In this project, I carried out 38 micro-phenomenological interviews in total, which were also pretty long. And the aim of each of them was to get a detailed description of the temporal dynamics of the episode and of the structural features of the experience at given moments. And here we were focusing especially in the period surrounding the onset of lucidity. Then we carried out a qualitative micro-phenomenological analysis process in which I worked together with 2 external coders. And now I'm gonna take you through some of our findings. So in interest of time, I'm only gonna be able to offer you a glimpse of what we found. And I'm going to show you some findings from 18 signal-verified lucid dream episodes here. So the main finding that I want to start with, or the main observation, is that signal-verified lucid dream episodes that we looked at were incredibly phenomenologically complex and also very, very heterogeneous, very different from one another. So don't get scared. This is a very big table that we're gonna zoom into in just a moment, but I just want to show you some very coarse-grained observations that we can see from here. So in this table, I put the 18 signal-verified lucid dream episodes together and aligned them according to the phase that featured the onset of lucidity. So the moment that the participant becomes aware that they're dreaming. So each column, generally speaking, in this table represents what we extracted as one phase of the experience. So this is all phenomenologically based mapping. And we can see that the onset of lucidity, the onset of lucidity features at very different moments within the experience as a whole. So here we have a high heterogeneity of our episodes. But what typically follows the onset of lucidity is a more or less longer period of experience where lucidity features not as this explicit realization, oh, I'm dreaming, this is a dream, but more as a structural feature of experience that it shapes the experience as a whole. And we can see that this lucidity as a structural feature typically persists through many phases, and even through some events such as a total disappearance or change of dream environment, as we can see here. And the last thing that I want to show you on this big table is the timing of the eye movements. So as I mentioned, eye movements are typically taken to be temporal markers. And maybe I forgot to mention before, but not only of lucidity onset, but also of specific events during the lucid dream period. And of course, we'd assume that they typically happen at or right after the onset of lucidity. And indeed, in many cases they do, or they were at least reported to do so. But then we also have cases when there's a longer delay and eye movements happen 1 or even 2 phases later. And some curious cases in which eye movements were intentionally, voluntarily carried out, so a predefined eye movement sequence, left, right, before the participant was fully aware that they were dreaming. So we have cases, and I'm just going to show 2 examples here, where the participant is not yet aware that they're dreaming, but knows that they have to do something, and also knows that they have to do it for the experiment. So we have the eye movement that sort of triggers, in this case, as it is shown later on in this interview, the onset of lucidity. And here's another example. The participant says, I had this feeling that I had to do something, but I don't know what. And then she realizes, oh, it's the eye signal that I have to do. She does the eye signal, and through that, she realizes that she's in fact in a dream. And now zooming into the phases just around the onset of lucidity, I want to focus on 2 things here. I want to show you what types of experiences precede typically the onset of lucidity, and then I want to look at the experience of lucidity or the onset of lucidity itself. And I'm going to have to leave out a bunch of very interesting stuff having to do with embodiment and the changes in dream environment and so on, but maybe that's for the next satellite event that we have. So looking at the phases just preceding lucidity, almost all of our experiences featured long processes in which the participants engaged in a bunch of different metacognitive processes. Those ranged from, for instance, simply noticing strangeness on one end of the spectrum. So the participant here feels that something is off with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend looks exactly the same, but she just doesn't trust him in some way. Or in other cases, we have many examples of the incorporations of the sensory cues, which were a part of our method for inducing lucidity. And here we can see that the participant, being non-lucid, hears a weird sound. Actually, she pulled a platter out of a cupboard in her kitchen. And then quite immediately following that, she's weirded out by the sound and immediately realizes that she's dreaming. Typically, though, the process that led to the onset of lucidity took a bit longer of a time and consisted also in more explicit wondering, not really about am I dreaming, but about an element of dream experience or of dream experience as a whole. So here we have the same participant that before was like just weirded out by her boyfriend. A bit later, she starts thinking, why is he laughing? And why am I thinking about that? So the strangeness builds up and takes a long time until it actually then brings to lucidity. Here we have another example of an auditory cue incorporation. So here the participant hears a weird sound while she's in a school classroom, and then she first interprets it as a school bell, but then she's thinking, where is this coming from? What's going on? I had to understand what this sound was there for. So now, oh no, I have another cool example that I want to show you before we move to the onset of lucidity. We had examples like in all the cases that you see marked here with the turquoise color, examples where the wondering about an element of dream experience that eventually led to lucidity came in the form of researchers coming into the lab in a non-lucid dream, and then participants becoming freaked out by that and finally realizing this is not supposed to happen. That must mean that I'm in a lucid dream. So moving on to the onset of lucidity, in line with what I just showed you, it's not that surprising that lucidity itself was often experienced by the dreamer as an answer or solution to a pre-existing, typically quite urgent need for explanation. So we have the participant with the strange boyfriend telling us that, oh, okay, this is a dream. It's because of that everything was so strange. Everything fell together for her, everything added up. And we have many similar descriptions of, for instance, I couldn't figure out why something was going on, why my experience was in this or that way. And then it finally made sense once I realized that I was dreaming. And importantly, that was not only a retrospective, or the participants didn't report it as a retrospective recognition, but lucidity itself is experienced as this everything falling together. Then we have some other cases that are quite different, where lucidity is experienced, for instance, as simply waking up into an already lucid dream world. So the experience is lucid from the very beginning of the dream experience. And then one last thing that I want to show you surrounding the onset of lucidity is how interesting the emotional dynamics and affective shifts were that featured just before, or the shifts in emotion from just before to just after the onset of lucidity. So 9 out of 18 examples that we were dealing with here reported a sense of panic, powerlessness, fear, just preceding the onset of lucidity. And that could be experienced in different ways, depending, or came from different contents of the dream experience, but was pretty frequent, given that it occurred in half of our cases. In a complementary way, there was 9 out of 18 examples of experiences of excitement and relief just at or immediately following the onset of lucidity. That had to do sometimes with the fact that the participant was just happy that they're dreaming, and often with the fact that they knew that they're doing great at the experiment. So they were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing. And interestingly, these affective shifts were often related to interesting shifts in the sense of agency. So to explore this further, we would, of course, have to do another study, which I am planning to do soon. But lucidity itself was sometimes experienced as a way to attain agency over the ongoing situation. So going again back to the participant with the strange boyfriend, she was trying to save a drowning father of this boyfriend and couldn't seem to calm down. So she was not able to save him because she was too panicky. And then she says, oh, then I think, oh, it's a dream. That's how I can calm down, by realizing that it's a dream. And just as a last example that I'm going to show you, in this case, it's quite interesting that our dreamer is fully lucid already, but doesn't yet realize that she's taking part in an experiment. So why does she do the eye movement? She does it just to get out of the water. So I go left, right, and I just keep on going. I just want to get out of the water. And then within that action, I realize that I also have to do it for the study. And she says, at that point, I'm thinking, I don't really care about the experiments. Screw them. I just have to get out of here. And here are her eye movements that accompanied that experience. So I'm going to jump over some of the last slides that I already knew I wasn't going to have enough time to walk you through, to just walk through the final summary and implications of this research. So this research was designed as my overall PhD project, as a sort of a proof of concept for doing the neurophenomenology of lucid dreaming. And of course, there's a lot more to be done here, but it was quite cool to see that you can apply micro-phenomenology to experiences that people live in this lab environment, and which is the next step of this project, also meaningfully connect those experiences to physiological data. In terms of the contents of our findings, we saw that the lucid dream episodes that were lived in this otherwise quite controlled environment were very heterogeneous and complex, which points to the need for identifying more precise and hopefully more phenomenologically guided research targets. Some things to consider here: sense of agency, affective shifts, a lot of cool stuff with embodiment that I didn't have time to show you today, distinguishing between lucidity as an event versus a state of consciousness. And then overall, I think these findings point to the importance of investigating the temporal unfolding of lucid dream episodes, which typically isn't done because we use questionnaires that refer to the whole of the dream episode, whatever that is for the participant. And then finally, I just want to look at or mention that the range of the metacognitive processes that we saw in non-lucid phases that preceded lucidity points to the adequacy, probably, of a more continuous understanding of the relationship between lucid and non-lucid dreaming, maybe it will guide us away from considering these two states as opposing, at least when it comes to metacognitive processes. Future directions, I'm just gonna put them out there and jump to acknowledgements. Thank you all for your attention, and thanks to my great supervisors, collaborators, and external analysts that did a lot of very heavy work with the analysis process.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. I just have two quick questions. So the first one is that a really interesting finding seems to be that people perform the eye movement without realizing what it's for, and it seems that it's kind of as if they are, been programmed to do that by the preparation for the study. So I was wondering, and I'm sorry, I'm maybe not too lucid myself today. Have you administered suggestibility questionnaires, for example, to participants? Because I think that would be interesting to do. That's the first question. Second question is, what happened with that one participant at the bottom of your
Thanks. Nobody ever asked that. Yeah.
Of your table, because that looks different from the rest.
Okay, thanks. Awesome questions. No, there was no suggestibility questionnaire administered in this study. Also, I was more focusing on the phenomenology part, and I shouldn't take credit for the lab part that the people did at the Donders Institute. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm just trying to guide us to this participant here. I totally agree with you. I wouldn't say that, I would say that also the onset of lucidity itself is a way of programming yourself. So the best lucid dream induction methods in general will be those where participants set an intention before they go to sleep. And what I find to be quite interesting with the eye movement things is that it seems that there's a bunch of things that we might know that we need to do, but not exactly know how. So there's a feature of lucidity that's present, I think, in the cases when participants do the eye movements and know that they have to do them because they're participating in the experiment. So that's lucidity of some form. And I just want to stress that I only showed you here examples where eye movements actually led to the onset of lucidity. So there's a lot of data in lucid dreaming research where eye movements can be detected on the EOG, but participants don't recall doing them. Maybe if we do a micro-phenomenological interview with them, they would, there's these aspects of memory that can come out in this way. So this is another venue for future research, I think. And if I just briefly answer the second question, this is coded differently because this person, despite being physiologically in REM sleep and also, behaviorally unresponsive to stuff, she experienced her whole episode as if she was awake. So and she was even perceiving the sensory cues. She was like, what's wrong with these researchers? Why are they blinking the thing? Don't they know that I'm awake? And then she realized eventually, oh, I think that I'm awake, but the fact that they're blinking the lights must mean that I'm asleep. So this is an example of lucidity, but she feels that she's awake. And in general, the states of this so-called sleep state misperception, which actually might be states of mismeasurement, because phenomenologically the participant just feels that they're awake, were one of the most interesting findings of my interviews. But yeah, I didn't have time to get into that today.
Thank you for the amazing talk. I'm very interested into the link between the insight and the affective response. So why do you think there is almost fear of knowing, taking place in these experiences?
Fear of knowing what exactly you have.
Because you become aware of a hidden reality of the reality that, for example, you are in a dream, but that comes with a specific emotional response that is associated with panicking or with excitement. But why do you think there is this link between a sympathetic parasympathetic response and a cognitive insight?
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I won't really comment on that, but I think arousal that comes with being in a panic state may have something to do with becoming more receptive to paying attention to the state that you're in general, but that's something to be explored and that hasn't been demonstrated here. But I also think, we're comparing this to non-lucid dream experiences, but non-lucid dream experiences are also typically not investigated with micro-phenomenology. I think we might also find a lot of episodes where lucidity is not achieved that contain metacognitive processes, panic, really strong emotional experiences that the questionnaires might just not really get at. But I want to just show you one thing, because you mentioned something about the fear of becoming aware. So there's this one interesting case where the participant was asking herself a question, am I dreaming? Not only here, but 2 meters back here at the beginning of this table. And she decided to ignore the question, and so because she didn't wanna wake up. There also seems to be here and in other cases this attachment to the state that the people are in, and I want to keep dreaming. I don't want to wake up. I don't really know why, but I sort of don't want to realize that I'm lucid. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on with not wanting to get out of the state that people are in, maybe. So another target for future research.
Questions? I don't think everything goes. It's a quick question. Thank you for the really nice study. But what I was just wondering, the center agency controlling is it's related to the lucidity onset. But do you have any reports that even before the onset, do they even have just the experience of agency without actually making the choice? That's really interesting.
Yeah, this is why questionnaire-based approach is often lacking, because we ask people, did you have control over the dream? And a lot of non-lucid people are like, yeah, I walked around, I opened the door, I had control over my experience. It's a sort of a non-phenomenological question. I think a lot of these participants were doing very complex stuff and reporting maybe a sense that they can't do exactly what they want to, and then the lucidity was accompanied by this, oh, actually I can get out of here. But there was I wouldn't say that non-lucid dreams have a non-existent sense of agency. I think it's very present as a part of experience. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. This is not evidence-based, but I'm just approximately. But
thanks. I think it's a really wonderful approach to sort of break down the neurophenomenology. One question I had was how many sort of failed trials do you have where people woke up as soon as they reported lucidity? Because that seems to be a common phenomenon as well.
Well, not in this study, it wasn't that common. So here, if we look at the table as a whole, you can see. Again, okay, I should answer briefly, which is difficult because I have interesting stuff to talk about. Okay, here on this table, you can see that this is the actual waking up. So this is the waking up that corresponds to the physiological waking up. But there are instances where people stop. So this is a shift from a lucid dream to the person thinking that they're laying awake in bed and just waiting for whatever is going to happen, and then the researchers call their name at the end of the REM period, and then they wake up for real. So I also think that, so there's many subjective experiences of the dream disappearing after a while and the person waking up, but that doesn't always correspond to the actual waking up. And as we see in most cases, maybe in some, the waking up happened quite soon after the onset of lucidity, but in most cases, lucidity, they were able to keep being in the dream or sleep state for a while after the onset lucid, or in some cases losing lucidity after that. Yeah. Oh, but they were also told that they shouldn't do anything exciting. So what often happens is people start flying or like having sex or being like interested and excited about stuff, and then they wake up. Here they were like becoming lucid and then often being like, okay, now what am I supposed to do now? I shouldn't get excited. So yeah.
That's really interesting, and just had a sort of counterpoint to the question around arousal as well. I wonder if it's sort of, in a sense, in lucid dreaming, what's happening is there's sort of like a hacking of the waking up experience, and so it wouldn't be surprising that part of that drive is experienced as sort of anxiety, and yet in the lucid dream, it doesn't proceed to wakefulness, it proceeds to sort of a different path. So it might be part of that in your drive too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, we're running out of time. Thank you so much. I think we have a new question.